What I do is I just try to take my hat and I turn it around, and it's like a switch that goes on. And when the switch goes on, I feel like another person. I don't know, I feel like a truck machine.
Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike. Today I will talk to you about the 1986 Lewco over-the-top toy line based on the movie with Sylvester Stallone, and we'll talk a little bit about the movie. We're going to talk about each one of these figures. There's 6 figures, wrestling table, then a supersized, enlarged version of Sylvester Stallone's character. But we're going to get in and take a look at this, but I gotta say, these figures aren't cheap. The best way to describe the price of these figures is over the top. We're going to get talking about this and more coming up. So when I first heard people talk about they made toys for this movie, I remember thinking the movie was okay, and it just felt okay. But it's one of those things that I didn't realize how many people were involved that were actually in the arm wrestling scene, and pretty much all of these figures are based on somebody that was arm wrestling at the time and was in the movie, which is pretty cool. Some of them I can't quite find them in the movie, the footage of it, but it is interesting because there's a lot of people that were actors in this. Well, they weren't really actors, they were just real live arm wrestlers, but they were talking about telling their story of being part of this movie. It was kind of fun, kind of interesting. But the movie itself, it's okay. It's enjoyable for a watch. I don't know if I'd watch it multiple times, but it was fun to watch again, and definitely worth it for this toy line. Alright, so first off, we're going to talk about the main character, which is Lincoln Hawk, and he is, of course, based on Sylvester Stallone. And there's a pretty decent likeness to him, but let's compare him to a couple other Stallone figures. Here we have, I actually forgot who made this one. I gotta look that up, but this is a Rocky figure that kind of looks like a Motu figure in a way. And then there's, of course, Coleco and their Rambo figure, which they had a pretty good head sculpt. And then this head sculpt. So it's funny how they all look pretty close to Stallone. Well, that one not so much, but these two pretty good. I think Coleco still did a better job on the head sculpt. Size-wise, though, he does tower over the rest of them. I'm going to show you what I think he's in scale with. He does scale pretty well with Kenner Centurions. As you know, I like Centurions. And for that fact, fun that they scale together. There's not very many toy lines that scale with Centurions. So here is packaging. They all look the same. They just have like a different name there, but yeah, pretty much the same. And then the back, I do like that you get the checklist on the back. That really works out pretty good. A little bit of cross-sell to the table. And then there is they show the gimmick. But there they are, all of them. But we're going to start, of course, with Lincoln Hawk. And he's going to have to show us what's going on with this toy line. So he's a big figure, and his head moves side to side. It's a soft and squishy head, which I don't know. I never understood why they made all the heads soft and squishy like that. But then he has shoulder articulation, and he has elbow articulation, which I feel real strange about that. No waist swivel, and then leg out to here, back to here, and no knee or foot articulation. But the big thing is that when you put the arm like this, they do an arm wrestling thing, and you turn this knob. Well, it looks like he's fanning, you know, well, don't go in there. Or he's could do his hair. But it's all about the arm wrestling gimmick. Now, what I understand, and when you get the table, we'll show the table, when you get them in there, you're supposed to, like, put them on the arm wrestle table and see who wins by turning. But it feels like you're going to grind the gears and mess this figure up. That was a really, in my opinion, is a cool gimmick, but it kind of messes the figure up over time. And with that, I'm very gentle with it because I'm just happy the gimmick still works in most of these. But here he is. He's got this big tampograph eagle on the front, hawk on the front for hawk hauling from the movie. But yeah, pretty simple figures. They are all pretty simple figures overall. This one is by far the easiest one to get because he's the main character. He was also packed in a 2-pack with the table. So therefore there were 2 options to get him. And yes, cool looking figure overall, and the staple figure in the line. Next up, we're going to get into talking about Johnny Iceman Walker, and he's probably the second easiest figure to get next to the Lincoln Hawk figure. So obviously the main character is the easiest, and then I think he was also packed in that 2-pack. It was him, and it was the Sylvester Stallone figure in the 2-pack, which makes them much easier to get your hands on. So with that, they were the cheapest that I got, for probably in the one for 50 and one for like 70. Now these are not cheap figures. Now as we come, the prices are crazy, but mine's a little beat up. Mine's got some wear and tear, and I was okay to get it a little cheaper. With a little bit of wear and tear. He does say Iceman on here. Of course, that's rubbed off a bit. But I still think it looks pretty good. A pretty cool looking figure. All the same stuff. It almost feels like the exact same buck as the Sylvester Stallone figure. But it might not be the same buck. But it does look. It does feel. 1, 2, 3, 4 of these look like they're the same buck. But I might be wrong on that. Still looking pretty cool overall. That we've got this character. I was trying to figure out which one it was when I was looking at footage. And I can't nail it down to exactly who it was in the movie, but still a cool figure overall, and very common. Well, none of these are very common, but more common than some of the rest of them, and he looks cool. And can I get his feature to work? Yep, feature works. All right, anyway, not very well though. And as you can see, the features get stripped out in these. Iceman. Next up, we have John Golden Boy Bresnik. So it's just a blonde dude, blonde version of the Sylvester Stallone, which makes me, when you look at these side by side, it really does look like the exact same buck. And that's his face. So this is an actual arm wrestler, and I think he's been on some of the show, like some other sort of YouTube videos talking about arm wrestling. They really were all excited that they thought arm wrestling was going to take off after this movie, and it really did not. But still pretty cool, pretty interesting figure overall. Very plain because it's the same thing and feels like a reuse of a buck. This was Lewco's first stab at a toy line, so obviously they wanted to do as much reuse as they could with it. But yeah, in the back, I got a little bit of wear and tear and beat up on mine, but I'm happy to have him. Pretty cool, and of course his arm wrestling gimmick works and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is that it seems like they could have just used this buck and just popped other heads on it and repainted sleeves and stuff, which is what they did here, and they could have done that further. But 2 of them have all completely different molds, which makes them way more expensive and harder to track down. But anyway, this is John Golden Boy Bresnik. Then we got John Grizzly, who was definitely an actual arm wrestler himself. And then there's a couple of videos of him talking. He said they asked him to grow his hair out and make him look as wild and crazy and as he could. And he's probably the most memorable from the movie. And he was just over the top of crazy and wildness going on. I thought this was pretty cool. I did get this figure for like $70, and all of these I got like 70 or less, up to the 2 big expensive ones. But I've been collecting for a while, and I think that he looks pretty cool, pretty interesting. Although it's the same buck, you can see the wiggliness in the arm there, so you do kind of worry about, like, even the one that doesn't have the gimmick can fail on you. And you know, I've got problems with mine. Mine aren't perfect. But I'm happy to have them. Happy to have them as cheap as I got them, that's for sure. Because I really did not want to spend a ton of money on this line. I saw people asking ridiculous amounts, but patience did save some pockets on this line. But I like his green hat. It's kind of cool. I did have to clean this one up quite a bit. But after the cleanup, I think he looks really good. I think it worked out okay. But as you can see, the same buck with slightly different paint jobs. And the belt buckle looks a little bit different than the rest, but everything else looks pretty similar. Pretty much the same. That is John Grizzly, and probably the most interesting character that they had to arm wrestle in the movie. Next up is Cleaver Arm Bender Dean, and he's got a cowboy hat, which is kind of cool, but it's molded in. Thank God it's molded in. I mean, imagine how many of these, the 4 that exist, would have no hat. and that would be terrible. He's got a big old smile on his face, and he is an actual arm wrestler. I don't really see him in the movie though, but they made the figure based on a real arm wrestler, which was kind of cool. He got his big overalls or overalls, and that's how the actual wrestler wrestled. It was kind of cool. He's a very fiddly figure, and I don't want to break him. So I found this one and is real fiddly for whatever reason. He is his own mold, and so with that, he's just huge. This dude is just huge. He has some weight behind him too, and he stands pretty good though because he's a big dude and different mold than the rest of them, and does command a little bit heftier price. So he's like a $300 to $500 range figure. Can't believe he's that expensive. I absolutely can't believe this figure is that expensive. Anyway, this one is the Cleaver Arm Bender Dean. There we go. The last figure in the 8-inch range is the Bull Hurley figure. I want to point out something too. The package shows him looking different with a hat. He looks way different in the package, and all of them look a little bit different. Even Sly Stallone there looks different, but this one looks way different than the packaging showed. But obviously they just did one run and done with this toy line. Now, I do like that he has his glasses on. It makes him look really cool, and he did have that at the beginning when he met them up in a random truck stop and tried to challenge him before the Vegas one. Then that's when he had his glasses on, but he wasn't wearing red. He was wearing a red t-shirt in the actual match, but not a vest. So they did take a lot of liberties with this figure, but it's still pretty cool. It's a good looking figure overall. Another one of fiddly. I don't want to mess with him and break him, so I'm not even going to mess with the action gimmick on him. But here he is from the back. He's big. He looks cool. Really massive dude. And he was big in the movie, in the show. He was a big dude, and with that, he's a little bit on the back heavy side. Not sure why, but I think it's a cool figure. My favorite out of all of them, actually. Like, I might be pulling him out for some other videos just because he's that cool looking. He is that cool looking, and yeah, this is the main bad guy. He's the 5-year arm wrestling champ. He's not really a bad guy so much. Everybody wants to win. Everybody that competes wants to win. I mean, if you were in the Bull Hurley story, then definitely the Lincoln Hawks guy would be the bad guy, right? Anyway, this is Bob the Bull Hurley. The last figure is the massive 14-inch version of the Lincoln Hawks figure, and he's huge. And he is not exactly the same, but you can actually make a mistake and go, oh wow, there's a good deal on one of these over-the-top figures, and end up with this massive dude. So understand that he has no elbow articulation, and his head looks different. He looks different. I mean, I don't know if I could do a forced perspective comparison, but yeah, way different figure from what you're getting with this size. And the smaller one is more expensive, even though he's the cheapest of the line. That's actually the cheapest of the line. And they only made the one. It doesn't really make sense. Who's he going to arm wrestle? And maybe Optimus Prime? Here's next to a Masterpiece Optimus Prime. He dwarfs even Masterpiece Optimus Prime. Crazy. Huge. 14-inch. So next up we get into the table. And it's a pretty interesting table. So you put one figure on this side, one figure on that side. And then you can adjust the handle into their hand. And then you turn the gimmick and see who wins. See who is willing to push their figure to the limit and possibly strip that little gear in there to win. To win nothing. You don't win a rig. You don't win any money. But it's kind of cool. It does say down here 1986. 1986. It's interesting that they made this table. Would be kind of fun to have 3 of them. So all 6 of your figures could be arm wrestling somebody, but just getting your hands on one, it seems to be a challenge this day and age. And there's also a role-play arm wrestling kind of thing going on, where kids can arm wrestle each other, and role-play, like they have a role-play table, like an arm wrestling table. Now, I think I've seen those pop up, but I'm not interested. I don't really do the role-play stuff so much. I have a few things, but I don't need it for every line. And definitely not for this. I don't know where I'd display it or anything like that. But it's still kind of fun, cool, interesting. Just something that they made. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this look at the entire toy line. The over-the-top Lewco toy line. It's okay. It's not the worst toy line in the world. The figures are big. They got a good size to them. Definitely have a shelf presence. There's only 6 to track down. Yes, a couple of them can get kind of pricey. But at the end of the day, it's fun to collect it, have it, be done with it, and move on to something else, but still look back and enjoy this. Anyway, what do you think about this toy line? Have you ever picked up these figures? Did you even know this was a movie? Did you even know they made toys for this movie? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and Tydirium Hanger out.
One reminder, once again, this is a double elimination competition. You have to lose twice to be out. In other words, if you lose once, looks like he's going to be here for the finals. He's still the man to beat. And that concludes the women's competition. Over here, John Grizzly. Another win for him. Bull Hurley keeps on winning. First of all, the semifinals. Fighting will take place on these 4 tables, and the 8 best arm wrestlers in the world will be competing.
And what you said to me, remember? Now is the time to do for yourself. There will be nobody halfway. If you want it, you gotta take it.